What's up, gentlemen? This is Rising Phoenix Podcast, a podcast about how to rise up after your divorce. I'm your host, divorce coach Michael Rhodes. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to the show. This is episode 139. This is going to be another solo one, and I'm going to cover self-worth and how your thoughts can affect and ultimately, I think, define that. But first, I really want to take a moment to sincerely thank all of you that listen. I know I've probably done it before, but sometimes it really just hits me when I look at these numbers. And I know, again, to certain podcasts, they're, next to nothing. But when I look and I consistently see people from different countries all over the world listen to this thing, and of course in the States is the majority, but even still, on a regular basis, Sweden, South Africa, of course Australia. I could go on and on. It's very, very fucking strange, but also very awesome. I'm just a dude in his basement in Pennsylvania, but to be able to reach folks from so very far away or even close, to reach folks at all that I know are in need. And I get messages and I get notes from folks, and I got to tell you, I for a very long time, I was pretty uncomfortable with that for a lot of reasons, right? Imposter theory, my own self-worth, like the story of my self-worth smacking up against these nice comments and nice notes and nice emails. And, um, that was difficult to sort of reconcile. Um, as you know, when you go through this process, you feel like a piece of shit. And, roughly a year and change out, people were telling me how much I was helping them. And it really was, it smacked against all the shit that I was feeling for sure, but that she said. And so to hear those things initially was very uncomfortable. Um, and it's still, I wouldn't say I'm like 100% comfortable with it, but I really try to, I just got a nice note this evening. I really try to embrace it now and just kind of sit with it for a minute. It's some guy who I believe this gentleman is in Indiana, and shout out to Kevin. I don't know if I'll ever meet this gentleman in person. Hopefully, maybe someday I will. But this guy's never met me face to face, but he had some really nice things to say this evening, and it's fucking nice. And it no longer makes me uncomfortable in a way that makes me sort of question my self-worth or whatever. Because I think in the past when someone would say nice things, I would be like, yeah, but in my mind, I don't know that it was a conscious thought. Probably was to some degree. But it certainly it wasn't a comfortable thing. I certainly didn't I didn't really like it. I mean, of course there's always sort of a part of you, I think, that does, but it still wasn't very comfortable. And so I'm trying to I don't want to say absorb it, but sit with it and appreciate it. And I do appreciate it. And it is, yeah, it doesn't suck. So those of you that have ever reached out and said thank you, or that those of you that continue to listen, I don't know. These numbers are so hard to determine how many folks listen. I don't fucking know. If I had to guess, I think there's a solid 500 of you that are pretty consistently listening to these episodes. And I think there are other people that dabble in other episodes. So, I know the total number of listeners on some of the big podcast services, but it doesn't, I don't know. I only know the raw number in terms of like, I think Apple says it's like 2,500 listeners. and I think 1,800 engaged. I'm not sure what the metric is there. I know it says it, but I don't fucking dive into it. I think if you listen to a certain percentage, you're an engaged listener. And that's just Apple. So I don't know. Maybe there have been 5,000 people that have listened to this podcast. I really don't know. And I would say I don't care, but that's not fucking true. Of course I care. I try not to care, and I certainly don't obsess over it, but of course I care. I want more people to listen. And it's something that I don't stress out about, though. Honestly, it is what it is. I think that I'm helping, and I know that I am because I'm getting that feedback, and that's all that really matters. And I know that I have, struggled at times, and I've been very fucking transparent about that. But I think I'm here to stay, at least for the foreseeable future. I could see maybe getting to the 5th year and being like, okay, I think that maybe that's a wrap. I don't know. I sometimes think about that, but it's not a plan, and it's not a, um, it's a thought on occasion, but it's not set in stone, or even it's not even set in fucking pencil. It's just a thought on occasion. I'm like, well, maybe I'll stop then. I do sometimes wonder if I'll run out of shit to talk about, but clearly I can fucking rant and ramble. That's not the case. And I think there'll always be guests, and I do hope, I guess if I'm being honest, there's a part of me that hopes that if I can start getting celebrities and bringing them into the fold and interviewing them, that this thing would pick up steam, and then I would have, more and more folks to, there's folks that are definitely on my list. Of course, Corey Taylor. I thought it was making some progress there, but it all fizzled out. It's tough, man. It's crazy because in my real job, I'm really good at networking, like really fucking good at it. But with this podcast stuff and famous people, there's gatekeepers that I don't even know who they are. And I don't know anybody in the industry, like podcast, or maybe it's journalism. I mean, obviously it is a type of journalism. So maybe that's my end. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But that my hope is in some ways that I can start interviewing some people like Corey Taylor, like Jason Sudeikis. I would love to interview him. Rachel Bilson, because she's super smoking hot. And I don't know, did she actually marry Hayden Christensen? I'm not sure. But she was in a long-term relationship with Darth Vader, or Anakin Skywalker. And they have a kid together, but they didn't, they broke up. I don't know if they actually married. I don't think that they did. And yeah, she's probably the hottest chick on the planet in my eyes. That's my type right there. Tiny brunettes are my favorite. And along with anybody that's been through it, that Eddie Vedder has. I'm a big Pearl Jam fan. You see right back there. He's went through a divorce. I would love to interview Eddie Vedder about divorce. I mean, so, maybe one day I'll be an overnight sensation. But if I'm not, that's okay too. I'm really enjoying this. I'm really getting really good feedback, and I feel like I'm making a difference, and that's all that fucking matters. So with all that fucking said, let's move on to topic at hand. I was sitting there this evening, maybe 20 minutes ago, thinking, I don't think I have a solo episode in me this week. I'm just going to put out another interview because I have one in the can that's ready. It's not ready to go, but the editing is it should be pretty simple. By the way, apologies for whatever it was. Dr. Stan, I think I realized that I left in the internet issues. I went back and edited it. So apologies for that. It is fixed. I forgot, honestly, that there were issues. But anyway, so I was going to put out another interview because I was like, I don't want to force a solo episode. And then as I was literally sitting there typing into the Discord, hey guys, I don't think I'm going to be able to do a solo one this week. It hit me. One of the members posted recently about how, I mean, he was in a bad space and in a bad place. And by the way, again, if you're lonely, if you're dealing with depression, if you're looking for like-minded guys. If you're listening to this podcast and you're not in the Discord, I'm a little baffled. Um, it's where you should be, and I know that that means you have to give me $5 every month, but to me, it's worth it. But anyway, I digress. Um, this particular member was in a bad space, and he posted that one of the last things he posted, I think it might have been the last line of his post, was, "I'm fucking pathetic." Oh, whoa, man. No fucking sir. Um, what for whatever reason, when I was typing out that, "Hey guys, I don't think I'm going to be able to do a solo one this week. I don't want to force it," that post popped into my head, and I started thinking about that mindset and that feeling really that you get in this during this journey sometimes, where you just feel like you're fucking worthless, especially in the beginning, especially and I think he's further than the beginning. I think he's a few years out. So I don't want to make him feel bad if he's listening to this and thinking, yeah, but I'm not in the beginning. It's okay. Wherever you are in your fucking journey, there are times when you feel pathetic, when you feel worthless. And this is, at least in part, and probably a very large part, where the work comes in. So if you don't learn to be mindful of your thoughts, they will run amok. Your thoughts will typically be negative and typically centered around your story. And your story comes from what? Your childhood, from your parents, how they talked to you, how they treated you. And I think you could probably throw siblings into the mix, because there can be dynamics where siblings can enforce some of the shit that your parents say. Sometimes I think in families, and I'm really strongly considering taking a course on family dynamics, because I think it is another piece of this fucked up puzzle we're all in. Sometimes you get sort of slotted as a certain person or story within your family, and that can be the theme. That can be, well, he's a fuck up, or whatever, or he's lazy, or whatever it is. And I think your siblings can reinforce that, because there's comfort in agreeing with the parents, and there's comfort in, this is my slot and my box and my space in life, or whatever. And I think that all of those things they fucking do write our story for us. And if you're not careful, those stories will continue to be written to your detriment, even if you don't want them to, because you want to be better or whatever, or healed or whatever. But if you don't get to the root of the fucking problem, and I don't mean necessarily going back and digging out all your past traumas. I do think that there is some worth or good that can come from that. I do think that there is good that can come from sort of being specific about some of the shit that you went through, especially if you've never really talked about it with anyone. I do think that is where therapy can be an extremely helpful thing. But I do think also that if you listen to these episodes lately, you hear, and it's funny because it's psychologists that are saying it. You've heard more than one person say lately that therapy isn't always what it's cracked up to be, or isn't always the best thing. I find that interesting. But anyway, that's another whole episode to give my take on that. And maybe that's a future one. But if you have these past traumas and they're sort of a crawl or a sticking point, right? Then I think that's okay to talk about them, to bring them to the present, and to share them with someone, and get someone's third party view of it, and say, yeah, no, that is fucked up what they did or said or whatever. So I think there is absolutely value in that, but I think it's more important to just understand themes, stories. So if you can kind of understand why you think you're a fuck, or why you think you're pathetic, right? Okay, well, my parents basically told me that, in my dad's eyes, I could never do anything correct. That wasn't true in my case, somewhat, but it was more my mother. And so that theme, if I'm aware of it, then I can change it. And so without changing your thoughts, you're never going to change your worth. So step one is for me, and this isn't necessarily like a step-by-step process here, but these are just some of the things that I think are important about your self-worth and how your thoughts can direct it. Your thoughts are your worth. Your story, your thoughts will tell you or reaffirm what your worth is. And your thoughts come from your story, right? Your narrative. I'm pathetic isn't something that you came up with out of the blue. It's your story that you are not good enough. You are pathetic. And so that will direct your thoughts. So if so so first you got to be able to catch your thoughts. And this is one of the things I teach. I think it's week 8 because people always say this, oh, think positive and change, just look on the bright side and no offense to my brother Jared, but find the silver lining. All true shit. However, if you don't get in the habit of being mindful of catching your thoughts, of paying attention to your thoughts, you're never going to find them. Or you're never going to, sorry, you're never going to get to the positive. You're never going to find the silver fucking lining because you're going to stay stuck in where you're at. You're not paying attention to your thoughts. You're just thinking them. You're letting them run amok. And you can't fucking do that because our stories are so ingrained in us. If you think about the time from if you think you're pathetic right now, you're in your 30s or your 40s or your 50s or whatever, that shit didn't come out of the blue. It started from when you were fucking born, probably up until, well, probably initially, if you had parents that couldn't handle stress, then when you needed a fucking diaper change, they were stressed out and they fucking took it out on you. And I'm not saying beat you, but develop this sort of story, this theme that you are a pain in the ass, you are pathetic, which is, can you imagine being pissed off at a kid that's hungry? But because our parents didn't have the capacity to deal with the stress or life, when they had stress come up, they took it out on you. And so your story has been written for you from the time you were fucking born until whenever you started really kind of having your own independent thoughts. We'll say teenage years, but probably much longer because, again, if we're not aware of the story, if we're not aware of the source, we're never going to change it. It's going to continue. We're going to keep taking that input that they feed us. And it still happens if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever. If your parents are still around, they're finding a way to remind you of your story. And I'm not saying cut them off. You can, but that's not my point. Because first you have to be aware. You have to catch your fucking thoughts. You have to be mindful. And I say this all the time. Mindfulness doesn't mean being on a fucking mountain going, oh, although it could, I guess, but mountains seem like they would be fucking cold and I'm not into that. So it just means about paying attention to your thoughts. And so it starts there. Pay attention to your thoughts. And what are your thoughts telling you? What is your story? What are your thoughts reinforcing? So if you can start paying attention to your thoughts, then you can start changing your thoughts. And if you change your thoughts, you can change your life. And you can change your worth. But I'm not saying any of this is easy, but this is where the fucking work is. You have to be mindful of your thoughts. You have to know, what is your current story? What are you telling yourself about yourself? And I do think, again, it's helpful to be mindful of where that story is coming from, just for the source, just to look at it and go, you know what? Actually, it started here. Not to point fingers at your parents, although you certainly could, but just to say, oh, I wasn't born this way. I was crafted this way. My story was written for me. Now that we're conscious of this, we're able to change our stories. It is not fucking easy. It is really, really hard because, again, our stories were written for us from birth till fucking forever in some ways. But certainly, I would say, again, around, I don't know, your teenage years, maybe, then you're sort of conscious of, or you're more aware of the world around you and you see differences, right? You spend time with friends more and you see their family and their interactions. So sometimes it takes, up until that point where it's like, oh, well, my parents yelling at me, calling me stupid is that's not, oh, your parents don't do that. That's not normal. I thought everybody did that, right? So your story doesn't have any sort of ability to be written by anybody else but them for a very long time. And if you do anything for any period of time, you're going to get really fucking good at it. So you're really good at telling yourself that you're pathetic. And so it's going to be really fucking hard to change that. How do you do that, right? That's sort of, I guess, the bigger question. What I did was I worked, first of all, I spent a good bit of money. I'll tell you that. And the Alpha Code was definitely a step in the right direction for me. And that was a lot of fucking money. That was like $3,600, I think, if I remember correctly. I didn't have $3,600. My credit card did. And that's a whole other story. But, and that was helpful. But honestly, the biggest thing, and this is why it's week one of my program, and that's not the point of this fucking episode. It is narrative therapy. It is changing your story. So step one, what is your current story? What are you telling yourself about yourself? And I'm not going to get too heavy into this because I think I've already covered this in an episode, but make it simple. You can't, and I'm reading a book called Organized Tomorrow Today, I believe it's called. It's written by two doctors, I think. They work with professional athletes. Like I think one of them was employed by the St. Louis Cardinals for a period of time when they won 2 World Series. So this is the guy who knows, well, both of them, they know what the fuck they're talking about. And this book talks about not exactly what I'm talking about in terms of rewriting your story, but it talks about it's more around, in this particular chapter, it's more around I think it's public speaking and that kind of stuff. And it says the more complex or the faster, the more complex you make what you're talking about, and the faster you talk and things of that nature, the less likely people are to pay attention and to hang on to what you're saying. So to say it in a different way, that stupid acronym or whatever, right? Keep it simple, stupid. So when you're rewriting your story, make it simple. Yes, sorry, let me back up. When you're writing your story, keep it simple. I'm a failure because my parents told me so. And I know that sounds very, very simplistic, but you don't need to go into the nuance. It doesn't matter. Again, for healing and maybe in therapy, sure, if you want to dig up some stuff, but make it simple. I feel worthless because my parents told me I was, or whatever. And I kept fucking up throughout life, whatever. The rewrite is, my parents told me I was a fuck up, but yet here I am alive and find some positives. I have a good job. My kids love me. I'm a really good guitar player. I'm really good at woodworking, whatever it is, find a positive. And so you took that negative and you made it into positive. I'm being very simplistic here, but that's the fucking point, because the simpler it is, the more easy it is for you to hang on to it. So just keep it simple. And so once you learn to change this story, then you got to back it up. And you got to make sure it's sort of apples to apples. So let's say your story is, I'm lazy, I never finish anything. You could turn that around and say, my parents never encouraged me to finish anything, but yet I still managed to get a college degree, fucking finish building a deck or whatever. There are fucking examples of, I have a child who made it through, junior high or whatever, right? But successfully, there is evidence, and then you can back up that claim, right? And it's not false. It's not bullshit. It's changing your perspective. Your parents said you were this. Well, look what you did despite what they said, or counter to what they said, or whatever. And then continue to find these things by doing things. So if it's that you're lazy, then every day, write down, what did you do? This is what I do at the end. I don't do it every night. I try to, but fucking forget. There's probably a joke there somewhere about my parents told me I couldn't fucking remember anything. But anyway, because that was something that I was sort of, that was the story written for me at some points. You never finish anything. And my ex said the same things. And you know, there is some truth to that in some regards. You know, I would start projects, and I'm sure we're all dudes listening, right? I'm sure there's almost all of you are like, yeah, dude, I've started like I have like 6 projects in the works or whatever. Maybe it's 2 or maybe it's 4. I don't know. Yes, I do that, but I also fucking finish them. I also finish. You know, I made fucking dinner today. I did some laundry today. Yeah, I took the kid to saxophone lessons. I'm recording a fucking podcast episode. So if I want to develop evidence that I am not lazy, it's all right there. It just takes the work of writing it down, of imprinting it in your mind, and reminding yourself, like, oh yeah, shit, no, I got that done today and that done today. And some of it might be, or it was simple as I took a fucking shower. It's still doing something. It's still accomplishing something. And this is something we talked about in our book club the other night. Justin, shout out to Justin who brought it up. This total sidebar, but it just popped in my head. Sometimes in the beginning of this shit show, something as simple as washing a dish is a forward momentum to propel you. So it's a little bit of a sidebar, but what we have to do is develop evidence contrary to this shitty fucking story. Rewrite your story, change the perspective, and see how you sort of turn that negative into a positive, and then build on it by providing evidence against it. And now that means that you have to go do some shit. Nothing will change if nothing changes. So if your story is I'm a lazy fuck, then you got to start doing some shit. But spoiler alert, you probably already are doing shit. And once you start recognizing that, you're going to want to start doing more shit. I promise you. Because momentum builds. It's a fucking thing. It's true in sports. It's true in fucking life. Speaking of sports, the fucking Steelers traded Kenny Pickett. Holy fucking shit. And now Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are on the team? What the fuck happened? I'm not saying good, bad, or indifferent, although Kenny Pickett kind of seemed like a punk, if I'm being honest. Anyway, I digress. So I think that's all I got. I don't know why I wanted to bring that up, but I fucking did, because that shit wouldn't have happened 20 years ago. Although the 80s and 90s for the Steelers were pretty fucking rough because they could never find a good quarterback. Anyway, shout out to all Steelers fans. So anyway, so that's all I got for this one. I hope that you find it worthwhile. My biggest piece of advice to you is there are many episodes of this motherfucker. There has got to be some that pertain to what you're struggling with. Go back and listen and take fucking notes. It's not just me, some bald dude in his basement in Pennsylvania ranting to you about how he handles things. Although there is some wisdom in trials and tribulations. But there are trained fucking people telling you, oh, you've got depression? Well, try this and try this. And I think if you really just try some of these things, it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy, but if you try these things and make a concerted effort, you will come out the other side. You're going to anyway because you're here and you're listening. So you probably already have the mindset of fuck this. I want to heal and I want to grow. But sometimes we get stuck. And I can't do every episode to address your thing, you know, Joe in Sweden or whatever. I can't do an episode on depression every week. I don't know if that's your thing. I don't even know if your name's Joe. I know someone in Sweden's listening. I think it's more than one, but I can't address your issue on every episode. But I think with the exception of fucking dreams and codependency is coming up. I'm going to record an episode with someone who's, I believe she's a psychologist, maybe even a psychiatrist. I'm not 100% sure. And we're going to focus on codependency. So I haven't covered that one yet, but I will. I'm recording that this Wednesday or Thursday. I can't remember which. I'm recording 2 this week. And then I have another one I'm going to schedule probably 2 weeks out. And then I got a couple real men, real stories that are coming up as well. I'm going to record soon. There are 2. Shout out to Ian and shout out to David. Gentlemen, we will record soon. I promise you that. So just, man, dive into this fucking thing, man. There is so much information in 139 fucking episodes that I'll be honest with you, I forget more than half the shit that I've learned probably. And honestly, at times I go back and listen to shit. Because there is, like I said, a lot of knowledge and info in this thing. So that's it. Until next time. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. Since my separation in July of 2019, I have done an incredible amount of work on myself. I've had many different therapists, life coaches, and went through different programs. I've taken all that I've learned and put it into my own program called Forged by Fire. If you are interested in having me help you navigate your divorce, please hit my website, risingphoenixdivorcecoach.com. I look forward to working with you.